the Chinese are taking over by investing a lot of money in infrastructure around, transport, energy, because holding the minerals is one thing, but with that energy, with that export control, export capability, with that trade route, with that corridor, with that skill development, those minerals are worthless. And that's where the different powers are fighting, whether it's the EU, the Russia, or China, or India, are vying to get a pie of what the C5 country have. So to me, if I have to answer the question, who controls the minerals of the future, in the context of the C5, I'd say it will be a regional, relational control between India, who's investing a lot into a corridor there. You've got the US investing into local processing capability. The Chinese are already there and they're trying to assert themselves. But really what the C5 countries are trying to do, and that's what I would like us to remember, is the optionality. Is the option to work with the Chinese, the US, and the EU, which is what African countries are trying to do as well. Africa, as you know, the Chinese, the Chinese are really well advanced into the mining sector. In the DRC, for instance, most of the mines are owned by the Chinese, or at least have Chinese interests, and that's what the C5 countries are trying to avoid. Now, there are a couple of tools, I'd say, that the C5 countries can leverage. So we talked about the infrastructure development, and as Isabel mentioned just before me, usually the C5 countries were competing a lot, but now we can see a growing collaboration, because without that collaboration between those 5 countries, I think they will miss the opportunity to succeed. One of the major issues we see in the C5 countries is that the mining operations requires a lot of water, and water is something that region doesn't really have. So that's where the US is putting together some framework to do some technological transfer in terms of seed planting, to make sure that they're able to capture enough water to be able to do what they can do in terms of processing their water capability. Secondly, in terms of the processing and refining capability, we see that in the DRC, for instance, whereby their initiative aimed at refining and processing the critical minerals inside the country, because then it gives them the leverage, it gives them the skill that remains in country, and they can therefore capture the values. What the C5 countries wants to do is exactly the same thing.